Hey everyone, this is Kim, and I was debating on whether I was going to type this all out or get on camera and film a video, and I don't feel like doing that. So I'm just going to chat and see where this goes. So I wanted to talk about tinnitus, if that's how you pronounce it, tinnitus, and versus the tones. And a lot of people on the spiritual journey in particular say that they have the ringing in the ears, and it's because of their spiritual journey, and that it's the sign from the angels and their guides talking to them. And I'm not here to debunk that, but I do want to just talk about tinnitus versus the tones. For lack of other terminology, we'll just call them the tones. But before we get into the tones, let's talk about tinnitus. Tinnitus is a medical condition, and so many of you know this already, and but I'm just trying to paint the whole picture here. That tinnitus is a medical condition. I mean, if you have this constant ringing in your ears, it could be like a ringing, a whistling, cracking, like whooshing sound, whatever, different kinds of sounds. It's probably tinnitus, and you should go to the doctor and get a diagnosis of it. Because I personally have this. Mine is constant, 24/7. And I just have this constant ringing. And sometimes it's louder, sometimes it's not as noticeable. And I'm going to talk about that and what I think is going on with that. But um, if you think you might have it, just go get a diagnosis. That's probably the right thing to do. But tinnitus is caused by many different things. You can look it up. You can do more research. I am not making any claims, no medical claims, no, I'm not giving any medical advice or anything like that, okay? I am not an expert on tinnitus. I'm not an expert on frequencies or anything like that. I'm just sharing like my own personal experience, and then you please in the comments below share yours. But tinnitus is caused by so many different things. You can have allergies, like especially seasonal allergies. You might even notice during springtime or whatever that your tinnitus is louder. So it can be caused by that. Aging as you get older because of hearing loss. Exposure to loud sounds, especially if you were somebody that, if you used to go to like concerts and stuff like that a lot, you can have the tinnitus from that. It's exposure to loud sounds over a long period of time. But even I notice it with wearing earbuds. After listening with earbuds for a little while, that my tinnitus is much louder. Okay, so there's definitely something going on with that. You can have an ear infection and then experience tinnitus. Head, neck, or jaw injuries can cause tinnitus. Certain medications that you might be on, or just a whole slew of various health conditions like diabetes, migraines, high blood pressure. I have high blood pressure, and I noticed that my tinnitus is much more louder when my pressure goes up. It's actually like a sign to me, like, go check your blood pressure. So, I mean, there's so many other medical things going on, and your tinnitus could actually be a sign of something more serious going on. And that's why I say don't automatically jump on the spiritual bandwagon and say, oh, I'm having a spiritual experience, because there could be something medical going on. Most likely there is something, maybe not serious, but something on the medical spectrum that you might want to talk to your doctor about. It could be so simple as changing a medication or something like that. So, or you might have, like I said, you might have an ear infection, you might need an antibiotic, whatever. I'm just saying. So, with tinnitus, there's basically no cure, you know, but some of the things that they say that you can look up more other options or whatever, because again, not giving medical advice, but there's talk about getting back, enough sleep, because sleep can affect your tinnitus, your blood pressure, like I said. You can clean your ears out, avoid loud noises and sounds. Smoking can affect your tinnitus, caffeine, alcohol, that kind of stuff. So, review your medications with your doctor. And those are just some things regarding the medical aspect of tinnitus. Again, not a doctor. I'm going to say that 100 million times. For some people, it's constant. Like for me, my personal experience, mine is 24/7. Like right now, it is so loud. um, is 24/7, and other people, they might have just bursts of it, for a few hours here or there. Or if, for example, they're having seasonal allergies, they might have tinnitus just during that time, or they might have the tinnitus just um, after having a migraine or during a migraine. So there are people that have the tinnitus in bursts based on whatever medical issues or whatever's going on. So for some people it's occasional, for some people it's constant. And I have to tell you that living with it constantly, it can be quite a nuisance. And many of you probably know this, right? Tinnitus comes from inside you. It's an internal sound. Let's make that very clear. Tinnitus comes from inside you. It's not an external sound, it's internal sound. Now we have the tones. The tones, it is my experience that the tones are most likely an external sound. And I'll tell you why I think that. I have no proof, but I'll tell you why I think that. But the tones to me are more like a emergency broadcast sound that you used to hear on the TV, and we're like, it's like one of those, like, please stand by. I don't know how else to say it. I don't have a sample of it, but it's like it's a sudden onset of a sound, and almost like I almost hear a little it's like a little pop, kind of, and then this sound, it starts off low and then it gets louder, louder, louder till it's like super loud. It is much louder than the tinnitus that I have, because I have the tinnitus for sure. This sounds totally different. It is more like emergency broadcast, pay attention, something is going on kind of sound. It stops me dead in my tracks no matter what. It's just really piercing loud, okay? And it's usually very short, about 8 to 10 seconds at the most. Starts off low, gets really, really super high, and then it starts to die down and then just kind of taper off and end. I feel it's an external sound. It could be part of the tinnitus coming from inside. It could be. So I can't say with 100%, certainty. But I'm going to tell you why I think it is an external sound. One day, my husband and I were sitting in our TV room, and we both had this at the same exact time. Exactly. The emergency broadcast sound in our ear. Okay, the tone. All right, we had it at the same time. So we couldn't both be having a medical issue or something like that at the same exact time. That had to have been an external sound. Right? I mean, that's what makes me pretty certain, at least in my experience, that this short burst of sound is not tinnitus, that it is a separate thing. What is it? I mean, what the heck is that? Now, I don't have an answer, but many say that that is your spirit guide or a loved one or a spirit or whatever, an angel coming to you, whispering, information into your ear. Could be. I mean, I can't say whether it is or it isn't. It could be part of a spiritual experience. Sometimes when this happens, I've taught myself to, or I've trained myself to stop what I'm doing and pay attention. I never let that just go by, because I think it's important. Again, it sounds like an emergency broadcast. To me, it's just like, Kim, stop, listen. And so I do. I don't hear anything. It's not like I hear an immediate message. I just hear this really annoying high-pitched sound. But I pay attention to my own thoughts. What was I thinking at that time? Like, was I thinking something about making some kind of decision? Like, should I go on that trip? Should I take that job or whatever? And then all of a sudden I get this sound And that has happened to me many, many times when I'm thinking something and I get that sound. And then I'm like, okay, it's got to be related. That has to be it's got to be related somehow, right? And then, so I make note of that. And I also make note of, and I think this is really super important, I make note of how I feel later, or have I changed my mind about something later? Am I different somehow? Do I have a different view or a different opinion on something? Did that tone change the way I view something? Like, I was going to go on that trip. I really wanted to go on that trip. I hear that tone, and then the next day, nah, I don't want to go on that trip. You know, did was there a change in something after hearing that tone? I think that's something really important to take note of and write down and keep track of. I That's what makes me think sometimes when you hear that it is some kind of external sound that is communicating with you. Okay? But I'm going to throw this out there too. I sometimes question whether this external sound is, oh my gosh, I hate to say it, but a way to alter the way we think. Is it some kind of frequency being sent from somewhere, from someone, from some group, um, trying to change, trying to make us think a certain way or do certain things? I'm very cautious of that. I don't when I get the tone, I don't automatically think wonderful, fluffy, warm, fuzzy, oh, it's an angelic being telling me wonderful, beautiful things that I should do. I am very leery. I'm very cautious about any kind of external message I get, whether it's from an angelic being, um, ETs, okay, I'm just throwing it out there, whether it's from a spirit guide or a lost loved one or whatever. I'm very leery about anything that I might be receiving, any kind of information that might be being brought to me. Because at the end of the day, I want to be the one to make the decisions for myself and listen to my internal self, okay? Not outside messages. That's just not who I am, and I'm very cautious of that. So if all of a sudden my behavior changes or my thoughts change, I take that into consideration. Like, is it something that is like negative? Do I all of a sudden have like more anger, hostility, or just negative? Or am I feeling better or happier or positive or whatever? And I'm very cautious about when I get that tone and how it makes me feel immediately and or days after, dreams and all that kind of stuff. So I know it sounds really weird, guys, but I'm just being really honest that I do question when I get that. I don't always think that it's a wonderful, glorious spiritual experience. I'm just really cautious. I've always been about anything external coming at me. There could also be a totally non metaphysical, spiritual reason for it. This emergency broadcast sound, the tones that I call it, it could actually be, and I don't know because again, not expert here, but it could be some kind of waves going through the air. Whether now we got the 5G, we got all kinds of microwaves and Wi-Fi and all kinds of shit flying through the air that we don't see. That you could be very well just be picking up on some frequency that is, being broadcast somehow, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's some um, energetic being whispering sweet nothings into your ear. It could be frequencies and whatnot coming from externally, all the different waves and frequencies flying about, our planet. So it could be that too. And that could be why my husband and I had the tones at the same exact time for the same exact length, that it just could have been like some frequency shooting by, that we picked up on. It's like when you're tuning in, you remember well, some of you might be too young, but remember the old um, stereo systems in the cars, and you can't see me because I have my hand, but you're like switching the stations, and sometimes you're in between the stations and you pick up on different sounds. Well, when you're meditating, because this happens to me a lot during meditation, especially at the beginning or the end, or right before I'm about to astral travel, there's this cracking sound. This, like, that's what it sounds like cracking electricity, crackling kind of sound, along with a vibration when my whole body is vibrating and cracking and whizzing, and it is really, really loud. And that's the moment before I'm about to astral project, or that I can astral project, is during that time frame. And to me, that's like when you're in between, when you're switching the radio stations and you're in between one station and another, and you're kind of in between. And so you have that sound. So at that, I kind of got off track there, but that's just what it reminds me of, that it could just be when you're getting this sound, that you're getting some kind of frequency or whatever shooting about, whatever that is. Come on, they have so many things. There's harp and the Wi-Fi and the 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 microwaves and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? All these frequencies are coming at us all the time, and so it could very well be that, or it could be an energetic being trying to influence us, whether it is positive or not positive, whether there's an agenda or not an agenda. And you need to really pay attention to your own feelings, your own thoughts, and really try to zone in on whether that's you or something else influencing you. So that's my belief, my understanding, my experiences of tinnitus versus the tones. One being more medical and one being either scientific or spiritual communication of sorts, or something along those lines. It's external sound. But I do think that there's some connection to the external energies and tinnitus. And what do I mean by that? So, for example, and I wonder if this is why a lot of people who are on the spiritual journey, who are awakening and becoming more aware of their spirituality, I wonder if this is why we tend to have a greater um, that we've have more tinnitus, or we have a greater sense of the tinnitus within us, um, is because certain external energies, in my belief, can affect the tinnitus, right? So crystals, for example, I mean that's one for sure that I know from my own experiences, like clear quartz, really high vibe crystals, Herkimer diamond, moldavite, dambarite, the scolistite, the amethysts, ones that are high vibe, tend to really heighten my tinnitus, like make it so loud. So after I meditate with crystals, I mean it's like super loud in my head. So that's an example of how an external energy, being the crystal, can affect the tinnitus. So I do think it can make it louder. There's other external energies, such as like planetary things, when planets are in certain alignments or retrograding and things like that. The different moon cycles might affect people. One thing that I know affects me is solar flares and coronal mass ejections. When there's solar flares, my tinnitus is through the roof. I'm really affected by that. The Schumann resonance is another one. That is huge. When the Schumann resonance is getting altering and whatnot, going up and down like that, you can have greater tinnitus. You sense it more. It's so much louder. Trying to think of other external energies, crystal singing bowls, tuning forks, all that kind of stuff. Um, I know I'm probably missing some other external. Oh, weather. Weather can do it. So, after like a lightning and thunderstorm, my tinnitus is much louder. There's a lot of negative ions going on out there, right? So the weather, when the weather, changes abruptly, how a lot of people get migraines and things like that, right? So there could be some changes in that. Your tinnitus could be worse because of the weather. Um, Tornadoes, earthquakes, things of that nature could be affecting your tinnitus. I don't know if those have affected mine. I know that the solar flares have, and I know that crystals do. I'm not aware of other external ones. The thunderstorms for sure are another one. So those are just some external energetic sources that could be affecting the tinnitus and could be why a lot of us feel that the tinnitus is actually part of the spiritual experience. I just think we're more aware. I just think because we're on the spiritual journey and we're aware of a lot more going on, I think that we're more aware of the tinnitus and it's just so much louder. When you meditate, after you meditate, if you have tinnitus, it is just so much louder. And I don't know why. I can't claim to know why that happens. I just that we're energetic beings. And so of course, external energies are going to affect us. So it just makes sense to me that, if you have tinnitus and you have these external energy things going on, that it could increase your tinnitus. In terms of recommendations, I'm really hesitant to give out um, any medical advice or anything like that for those who are experiencing tinnitus. You know, I, again, I think it's something that you should check with your doctor about and, just make sure that everything is okay. Um, but in terms of the spiritual aspect of the ringing and things of that nature, it's so important to, well, let's put it this way. If external energies make our tinnitus louder, so if you have tinnitus, it's a medical condition, that's between you and your doctor. From my experience, external energies can make the tinnitus worse. So there are some things that I find help when my tinnitus is like just so loud. And it's because of some kind of external energy. So if a solar flare is coming and my tinnitus is really loud, I know I need to get outside and I need to ground 100%. I can't ground inside. I need to go outside and hug a freaking tree. All right, I really need to get out there and ground. Just lay all over the ground and soak it up or just go out in the woods. I need to do that. It's so important. Um, Also working with the lower vibe crystals, the agates, the jaspers, things like that. Your black tourmaline, your red jasper, your hematite, lodestone, petrified wood, very, very grounding kind of crystals. Okay, like avoid the high vibe crystals when your tinnitus is really acting up. Avoid the high vibe crystals. Go for the lower vibe crystals. In fact, just grab some rocks from outside. Really. I went through a period where I couldn't even work with crystals. I just needed to work with rocks because the tinnitus is just so loud. And it also, sometimes you can feel dizzy, have vertigo, and have all kinds of things going on. If there's something physical going on, again, doctor. But in terms of like metaphysical, spiritual, when you have when your tinnitus is really acting out, working with the high vibe crystals is just not gonna it's not the way to go, at least not for me. So I stay away from those and I do some grounding stuff and That seems to help. At least it helps to lower it. It helps to just make it more manageable. Um, even just if even envisioning, having being a tree, envisioning being a tree and having roots and having those roots go deep into the ground, just visuals like that. Also, I have a video about this, like letting energy out through the top of your crown chakra. That can also help when external energies are making your tinnitus, sorry, sometimes I say tinnitus, when external energies are making your tinnitus unbearable, sometimes letting the energy out through the crown chakra can help lessen that effect as well. But besides whatever medical things that you need to take care of, your blood pressure, medications, and all that kind of stuff, most importantly, from a spiritual perspective, is the grounding and releasing that energy. And that seems to help. Being more present, trying to bring yourself into the present may also help. Okay, so those are just some basic tips. I really don't have any other tips on how to manage it. And I'm sure there's medical things that we can do to help manage it. There is no cure, but we can stay away from some things that make it worse, right? Um, and that's how I feel about it. What do you all think? What do y'all think about the tones versus the tinnitus? Do you have this experience? I don't know of too many other people that I've talked to that actually differentiate between these two. Um, I can't really recall having this conversation with anybody else really. I don't know if anybody else has this phenomenon, the tones versus the tinnitus. I would love to know. It's not something that I've ever really talked about, I don't think. I might have briefly in a sentence or two on Facebook, but this is the most I've ever really gone out and really shared my experience about it. So that's all I really have to say about it. I'm eager to learn. I'm interested in knowing what the F the tones are, because I know what tinnitus is, and I know what makes it worse. So, what are the tones? I mean, are we being manipulated? Are the tones downloads? I will say, sometimes I feel like all of a sudden, after I have this tone situation, all of a sudden, I just seem to know shit that I didn't know before. So is that a download, or am I being downloaded with stuff? Is something happening? Is it a DNA activation? I don't know. Throwing out the possibilities. Let's talk about it below and let's be kind, share our thoughts and our ideas and whatever, but nobody's right, nobody's wrong here, okay? It's there's really no proof of any of this, so it's basically it's our experiences. So let's share with each other. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. I know this was a little bit long of a ramble, but that's how I roll. I love you all. Have a blessed day.